cell phone use causes lower levels of concentration. My opponent's secondary claims were that many people today are distracted by their cell phone use. Cell phones are linked to negative effects in student learning, and even when phones are not in use, they can still affect the brain. To support her secondary claim that people are distracted by cell phone use and lead to car accidents, my opponent stated that 75% of drivers in a survey stated that they text while driving. However, this survey was out of only 1,000 drivers, and in California there's about 24.8 million licensed drivers, making this this survey not very sufficient for her claim, making her claim a hasty generalization that 75% of all drivers text while driving. Additionally, there's no further information about the survey that was conducted. There's no information on how the drivers were selected for the survey, and there's a possibility that the information could be biased since it was sponsored by AT&T, which at the moment was promoting an app for drivers to stop texting while driving. And according to the Center of Control and Disease Prevention, the percentage actually appeared to be lower. 33% of U.S. drivers ages 18 to 64 report to read or write text messages while driving. In Spain, the percentages appear to be lower also, with 15%. Her second claim were that cell phones are linked to negative effects in student learning. To support her claim, she stated that students with cell phone use tend to have a lower GPA. The opponent fails to mention that there may be other factors besides cell phone use that makes students' grade point of average to be low. For example, there may be lack of motivation, problems outside of school, and lack of preparation, along with other factors. There's also a possibility that lack of motivation could be the reason in the first place why the student is using his or her phone in class. To support her third claim that cell phones not in use still affect your brain, the opponent used a study that looked at 50 college students. In the study, the students who did not use their phones performed better than those who the students who did not have their phone visible performed better than those who did. However, in the studies, the phones were not only visible, but they were also in use by the students. Therefore, this fails to support her claim that phones not in use affect the brain. In conclusion, 33% of drivers, not 75, text while driving. There may be other reasons why students perform poor in school, and phones might not actually affect the brain, therefore refuting to her claim that cell phone use causes lower levels of concentration.
All right, well, you identified the main and secondary claims very clearly. I thought that was helpful. The data on the first point, you're basically challenging whether or not an inferential statistic is valid, but you don't have any reason to suggest that there's something wrong with the sample size. 1,000 sounds like a pretty standard number, even for large populations that you might be estimating to. If there's a reason to believe that it was biased in some way, I think that that might be helpful. I like your other argument a little bit better that suggests that the statistics really suggest it's much lower than this. I do think you should probably try and do something to minimize the impact of the distraction a little bit more. For example, point out that as time goes by and people recognize that that it is dangerous, that it's likely to diminish, that there are laws that have been put into place to discourage people from engaging in this behavior. I don't think you want to deny that using a phone is distracting from anything else that you're doing. That makes you sound kind of like you are not a realist. But what you might want to do is diminish the significance of it. For example, distractions while calling. There are plenty of distractions that people have while they are driving, and it doesn't necessarily mean that phones are any more important than any of those other distractions. It's just one more thing. Like people who are driving in front of you, or billboards, or music on the radio, or people eating, or any of those other kinds of things. We got a whole bunch of things that are distracting. Why is this any more significant than anything else that's going on? I think you could argue that the advocate didn't really show that it's unique. On the second point, I like the idea of arguing an alternate causality, and in fact, I thought the idea that people having their cell phones out was an indicator of low motivation, not that they were low motivated because of the phones. So I thought that that was a good press on that. I think you need to have a little bit of data on this point. You don't really have anything. This is kind of argument that you can make almost immediately after you heard the argument, not one that's 2 weeks later. I think you needed to find something to respond to that. I thought you had a good summary of the points at the end. I didn't understand what you were saying on the third point. I mean, you just kind of summarized the argument, and I'm going, oh, well, and you say it's not true, and I'm going, well, what? I'm not sure what was going on here on that third point, so it just felt like it was rushed over. But you did have a nice summary of the claims that you were making at the argument. I thought that helped pretty well, and like I said, it was nicely organized. All right, thank you.